I want you to picture a historian. He's sitting at a heavy oak desk, probably in the 12th century.
Right.
He's a Christian cleric, likely freezing in a drafty monastery somewhere in Denmark, and he's writing in Latin. His job is to write the definitive history of the Danish people, the Gesta Danorum.
He wants to write about kings and holy lineages, the triumph of civilization, all of that. But he has this massive problem.
And that problem is the folklore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He can't just ignore the stories people have been telling for centuries.
He can't. That's where the history lives, in the oral traditions of his people. But those traditions are filled with things that make a 12th century churchman very, very uncomfortable.
That usually means women who refuse to behave.
Yes. This is the central tension we're dealing with today. The historian is Saxo Grammaticus, and he is trying to fit these wild 5th century pagan legends into a civilized 12th century Christian framework.
He's trying to square a circle, basically.
And nowhere is that tension more explosive than in the story of Princess Alfhild. This isn't just a story about a princess who runs away. It's a collision between who these women actually were and who a medieval monk thought they should be.
It's a fascinating document because you can almost feel Saxo gritting his teeth as he writes it. He is simultaneously impressed by her capacity for violence and just absolutely horrified by her gender transgression.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to walk through the legend of the Goth princess who became a pirate captain, but we're also going to read between the lines. We need to understand the shield maiden phenomenon and why it terrified the men of the Middle Ages.
Terrified them enough that they had to rewrite history to, fix it. To understand Alfhild, we have to start with her father, King Sigurd. We're in the 5th century. It's a time of wandering tribes, constant warfare.
He's a king of the Goths and he has one daughter.
Right, Alfhild. And the text makes a huge deal about her modesty. But this isn't just about being shy.
No, in Saxo's narrative, her modesty is practically a physical barrier.
It is. She reportedly kept her face muffled in a robe so that men wouldn't, go mad with lust at her beauty. Virginity, in this context, was her primary currency.
A resource that had to be guarded.
With extreme prejudice, yeah.
And King Sigurd took the concept of guarding his daughter very, very literally. He didn't just hire a chaperone.
No, he banished her to very close keeping, essentially locking her away.
Oh.
And then he gave her 2 pets to raise.
A viper and a snake.
Which is quite the birthday present.
Okay, I have to stop you there, though. This sounds less like history and more like a fever dream. Are we supposed to take this literally?
Did 5th century Goth kings actually use reptiles as a home security system?
Yeah.
That's the million-dollar question with Saxo. He presents it as historical fact. He writes that she fed them, they grew to a massive size, and they physically blocked her door.
But we have to look at the symbolism.
Okay.
I mean, Saxo is a churchman. In Christian iconography, what does the snake represent?
Sin, temptation, the fall of man. Exactly. So by surrounding her with snakes, the king is physically manifesting the danger of her sexuality. It's a warning.
The snake is the guardian of the treasure, but it's also a signal of the poison of lust.
Precisely. And Sigurd issues a decree. If any suitor tries to enter the chamber and fails to get past the snakes, his head gets cut off and impaled on a stake right there.
It's a keep-out sign made of monsters and dead bodies.
It's a brutal way to filter the dating pool.
You're ensuring that the only person who can marry your daughter is someone capable of killing monsters.
It creates this kind of Darwinian selection process. And it works. Saxo writes that the terror of it all chastened the heated spirits of most young men.
Nobody wanted to date the girl with the viper guards.
Except, inevitably for one guy.
Enter Alf.
Alf, son of the Danish king Sigurd. And he's the archetype of the hero. Saxo tells us that the peril of the attempt only made it nobler to him.
So he hears about the snakes and the severed heads and thinks, perfect, sounds like a Tuesday.
Huh, yeah. But he didn't just charge in, he has a strategy.
And his strategy is, let's call it creative.
It's tactical insanity. Alf bursts into Alfhild's chamber, dressed in a bloody animal hide.
Which seems a little counterintuitive if you're trying to woo a princess.
Well, the hide wasn't for her. It was for the snakes. The text says he wore it specifically to drive the reptiles insane. He wanted them distracted, aggressive, so he could fight them on his terms.
And the fight itself is described in gruesome detail.
It is. He takes a piece of red-hot steel with a pair of tongs and just tosses it down the viper's gullet.
Wow. That is incredibly specific.
And effective. While the viper is dealing with internal combustion, Alf takes a spear and thrusts it through the other snake's throat. So in just a few moments, the monsters are dead.
And he's standing there, covered in blood and animal skins, facing the king.
And surprisingly, this works on the father. King Seward is impressed.
He has to be.
Right. In this culture, martial prowess is everything. Seward basically says, okay, you passed the test. But, and this is a crucial detail, he doesn't just hand her over.
What does he do?
He stipulates that he will only accept Alf if Alfhild makes a free and decided choice in his favor.
This is the moment where the story usually ends. The hero kills the beast, the dad gives his blessing, the girl swoons.
And initially, Alfhild is swooning. She's charmed by his bravery.
But then
we have an intervention. Her mother steps in.
I love this detail because the mother almost never gets a speaking role in these old texts.
Exactly. And the mother gives advice that completely derails the fairy tale. She tells Alf to search her mind. She warns her not to be captivated by charming looks or, flashy snake killing.
She tells her to judge his virtue.
Yes, which is a surprisingly empowering moment. In a story written by a man who thinks women should be silent, the mother's advice is the catalyst for the entire plot.
She's saying, don't just marry him because he's strong. Think about what you want.
And Alfhild thinks about it. And she decides Alf isn't the man for her. But now she has a problem. She has rejected the order of marriage.
And in Saxo's worldview, if a woman rejects her natural place in the home, she swings entirely to chaos.
So she doesn't just say no, she goes nuclear.
She trades her modesty for men's clothing, she leaves the tower, heads to the coast,
and goes to sea as a pirate.
And this is where Saxo's language gets really interesting and really judgmental. He doesn't just say she changed clothes, he uses a specific term to describe what she did.
He writes that she and her companions unsexed themselves.
Unsexed. That is a heavy word.
It is. It's a translation of a concept that implies a violation of natural law. To Saxo, woman equals softness, piety, domesticity. By taking up weapons, Alfhild wasn't just acting like a man, she was, to him, shedding her essential humanity.
He says they abhorred dainty living and sought death instead of dalliance.
He sounds personally offended, like he can't believe they aren't using their beauty to flirt.
He is offended. To Saxo, a woman's beauty is a tool for melting men. Using a spear to kill them is a misuse of resources. He just can't wrap his head around it.
He frames it as these women rejecting their proper place in the universe.
And yet, despite all his harumphing and moralizing, he has to admit something pretty incredible.
Which is...
Alfhild was really, really good at piracy.
She was a raging success. Saxo grudgingly admits she did deeds beyond the valor of woman.
Pretty good for a girl.
Exactly. But the facts he records, they speak for themselves. She initially leads a crew of other women, these so-called shield maidens, or skjoldmare. But she becomes so successful that she eventually becomes the captain of a second crew.
And this one is fascinating.
It's a crew of male pirates.
That's a huge shift. Men following a woman into battle in the 5th century.
Well, they had lost their previous captain. They saw Alfhild in action, and they were entranced by her beauty and her ferocity, so they elected her their leader.
So now she's commanding this mixed fleet, amassing ships and causing absolute havoc in the waters off Finland. She is the pirate queen of the Baltic.
Meanwhile, poor Alf the Snake Slayer is still back in Denmark.
And he did not take the rejection well.
Not at all. He becomes obsessed. He pursues her through many toilsome voyages and across ice-locked seas. He's just trying to track her down. It becomes a pursuit narrative.
And eventually, the inevitable confrontation happens. Alf's fleet bumps into Alfhild's massive flotilla off the coast of Finland.
But he doesn't know it's her.
No idea. He just sees a huge fleet of pirates, and the odds are terrible. Alf's crew actually wants to retreat.
They see the size of the enemy fleet and say, let's get out of here.
But Alf refuses. He says it would be shameful to report to Alfhild that he was checked by a few ships.
The irony is just palpable.
Right. He refuses to run because he wants to impress the very woman who is commanding the ships trying to kill him.
So the battle begins. And by all accounts, this isn't a skirmish, it's a massacre. Alf's men are being slaughtered.
But as the Danes are dying, they're also confused. Saxo includes this bizarre detail.
The soldiers are marveling at the grace of bodily beauty of the pirates who are killing them.
Can you imagine that scene? You are in a shield wall, fighting for your life, slipping on ice and blood, and you're thinking, wait, why did these warriors move like that?
It just speaks to the cognitive dissonance Saxo is trying to convey. The men cannot reconcile the violence they're seeing with the bodies committing it. They're seeing women and warriors in the same space, and it's breaking their understanding of the world.
The battle reaches a breaking point. Alf and his lieutenant, a guy named Borgar, realize they're going to lose unless they cut off the head of the snake.
So they decide to storm the stern of the enemy command ship.
They fight their way through the shield wall. They're slaughtering everyone in their path. Borgar reaches the captain, who we know is Alfhild, and knocks the helmet off her head.
The big reveal.
And everything just stops. Alf looks down, sword in hand, panting, covered in blood, and he sees her.
He sees Alfhild, the woman he killed a viper for. The woman he chased across the frozen sea.
And here's the moment where the modern listener, we want a different ending. We want a negotiation, a partnership.
Join forces and conquer the known world.
Yeah. But Saxo gives us immediate submission. The text says Alf realized he must fight with kisses, not arms. He orders his men to stop.
And he decides the enemy must be handled with gentler dealings.
Gentler dealings?
That sounds like a euphemism.
In the context of the story, it's the reimposition of order. The battle is over. The gentler dealings involve getting Alfhild out of her sweaty sailor's clothes.
And into Alf's warm bed.
And Alfhild, the pirate queen who commanded a fleet of men and women. What does she say?
Does she protest? Does she negotiate terms?
She says nothing. Or at least, Saxo records nothing. Her voice, which was loud enough to command a fleet, is instantly silenced.
That is the most tragic part of this whole deep dive for me. The moment she becomes a wife, she ceases to be a person in the history books.
Her agency was tied to her sword. Once the sword was gone, she just became a footnote in Alf's story. Saxo writes that Alf took hold of her eagerly, made her change her man's apparel, and they eventually had a daughter.
And that is the end of Alfhild. It feels so incredibly abrupt. She's a warrior, then she's a wife, and then she's just gone. And that brings us back to Saxo's purpose. We have to remember this story acts like a didactic fairy tale, a parable for his 12th century audience. It presents a world of chaos, represented by women in men's clothing ruling the waves, that is eventually subdued by order.
And order, in his view, is marriage.
Right. Alfhild is fierce,
yes,
us, and Saxo lets us be entertained by her exploits for a while. But ultimately, the moral of the story is that she must be tamed. She has to be brought back into the fold.
The story isn't about her liberation, it's about the inevitability of her submission.
It's interesting that he even acknowledges the shield maiden phenomenon at all, though. He could have just left that part out.
True.
But he can't ignore it. The folklore of the shield maiden, the Steldmare, was just too deeply embedded in Scandinavian oral tradition. But Saxo views them with this mix of awe and harumphing disapproval.
He admits they existed, but he frames their existence as a temporary aberration, a phase they have to grow out of.
Exactly. The message to the 12th century reader is, sure, your great-great-grandmother might have been a pirate, but look, she eventually settled down and did her duty, so you should too.
It reinforces the gender norms of his own time by showing that even the wildest, most powerful woman eventually submits to a husband.
He spends significantly more time lamenting the existence of warrior women than he does actually describing Alfhild's life at sea. He's more interested in the moral of the story than the biography of the woman.
Which is a shame because the biography is fascinating.
Yeah.
A princess who raised vipers, rejected a prince, and commanded a fleet.
It is a remarkable life, even if we're only seeing it through this distorted lens.
So let's recap Alfhild's journey. She starts locked in a tower with a viper and a snake for company, which we've decided is probably a metaphor for her dad's terrifying possessiveness.
Right.
She rejects a hero prince because her mom told her to trust her gut. She runs away, becomes a pirate captain, rules the Baltic Sea, beats up the Danish fleet, and is eventually discovered, disarmed, and dragged back to the domestic life she tried so hard to escape.
It's a tragedy masked as a romance.
It really is, and to the modern reader, that ending feels so disappointing. But, and here is where it gets really interesting for me, perhaps the most surprising part of this whole thing isn't the ending, it's the admission.
How so?
That a 12th century historian, a man who clearly believed women belonged at the loom, had to sit down and write, in Latin, that for a time, a woman ruled the waves better than the men. He couldn't erase that part.
That is a great point. The fact that the story survived at all, despite the historian's clear disapproval, shows just how powerful the legend of the pirate princess really was. The folklore was stronger than the dogma.
Alfhild might have been tamed in the book, but the legend of the girl who chose the pirate life, that part seems to have survived just fine.
Indeed. It reminds us that history is often more complex and certainly more adventurous than the people writing it down want us to believe.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder your own life choices. Domestic bliss or the high seas?
I think I'll stick to the library, but I'll keep an eye out for snakes.
Good call. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next